Who's in control? Are you really in control of your thoughts, feelings, and emotions? That's a good question to ask yourself. From a psychologist's perspective, you're a collection of loosely integrated subpersonalities. And those subpersonalities have their basis in all sorts of things. They may have their basis in past traumatic experience or patterns of socialization that characterized your family. They also have their basic fundamental biological motivational systems. So, for example, a psychologist would conceptualize anger or sexual attraction as subpersonalities. And the reason for that is, for example, you know what it's like when you get angry at someone you love or you care about. First of all, you know that at some level you're wishing harm. Now, that might only be that you want to win the argument and you want them to lose the argument, but there's a desire that comes along with that anger or that emotion. But there's a lot of other things that happen too. So, for example, if somebody is annoying you, even if you love them and you care about them, the probability is high that in that moment, you're going to be able to easily access all the memories you have about how annoying they are, and you're going to have a difficult time accessing the memories about how wonderful they've been. Because we all have had those experiences where you get angry with somebody, you have an argument with them, and then you sort of clue in later, hours after the fact, you kind of snap out of that more or less possessed state, and you think, well, yeah, I really wasn't taking into the context into mind, and I was kind of harsh. And so then the question is, who's in control? And that's the question psychologists are really interested in. And their answer is, it's not generally you. And so it's very terrifying to think about in some sense, because people like to think of themselves as masters of their own house, if you will. And that's only vaguely true. You know that too because, for example, maybe you make a New Year's Eve resolution, and one of the most common ones is that you're going to hit the gym 5 times a week, and then you never do. And that's partly because it's hard, and so you don't want to do things that are hard, and the reason for that is because they're hard, so that doesn't take much explanation. But it's also that you can't just tell yourself what to do. And that's annoying because life would be a lot easier if you could just say, okay, well, I'll sit down and study a new language for 2 hours. Don't watch cats on YouTube or whatever. But then what happens? You sit there, you study for a little bit, and then, you're thinking about cats, and the next thing you know, you're watching Haunted Mansions in London or something. And it's a scary idea in some sense, because when you come to the realization that you're not the master of your own house, and if you don't have yourself under full voluntary control, and you certainly don't, then what the heck does? Freud is interesting in that regard because he really talked about the power of fundamental motivational systems. Mostly for Freud, it was aggression and sexuality, and those are big motivators, no question about it. So Freud thought of you as the conscious part of your personality. It was kind of like the captain of a ship with a very unruly crew. And that's a nice metaphor because, of course, the ship's on the ocean, and the ocean can be very stormy, and so you can only sort of plot your course, and you have to work with what's thrown at you, and then you've got this unruly crew, and that's a good metaphor for all your drives and subpersonalities, and the subpersonalities have their viewpoints, there are things that they want, so these subpersonalities are living entities. And Freud was interested in some sense more about the biological underpinnings of those subpersonalities. And then for Jung, these subpersonalities that make you up are thousands and thousands of years old. They are cultural constructions that are thousands and thousands of years old, and they have you in their grip. And one of the things that Jung said was that people don't have ideas have people. For example, you no doubt have political views. Well, no you don't, because you share them with a lot of other people. So they're not just yours. And not only that, they've had a very lengthy historical development far before you ever showed up. And also, they're rooted in your culture. But then, of course, they've also been elaborated on by philosophers extensively over the last 200-300 years. And so there's this whole system of thought that inhabits your brain. So the political views have you. It's not the other way around. And that's a very valuable thought, because it's one of the ways to stop yourself from being possessed by an ideology. Because people get possessed by ideas and ideologies all the time. That's what happened in Nazi Germany. That's what happened in the Soviet Union. It happens everywhere, all the time. And you might think, well, possessed is a little strong, but no, it's not. It's actually a very nice metaphor. And it's the right kind of metaphor, because a body of ideas, like political ideas, they're a living thing. They're not some dead, dusty words on a bookshelf somewhere. They are an integral part of a dynamic society, and the force those ideas have motivates you. You are in their grip. And so you can tell when you're talking to somebody who's completely possessed by an idea system, because they'll just bore you to death unless you happen to believe exactly the same thing. So they'll spout out a few of their fundamental belief axioms, and then you can pretty much identify quickly which system they are a part of, and then just they speak in cliches from that point onward, and you can predict pretty much anything they're going to say if you know the axioms of the system. So it's very, very inauthentic speech, because the person isn't speaking from their depths of their own experience or even their embedded knowledge. They're just mouthpieces for abstract ideas. And so it's very frightening to realize the extent to which you could be the mouthpiece for an abstract idea. And that is actually one of the dangers of becoming educated without understanding how to self-reflect and think critically, especially in the mass system like the university system, because a lot of what happens to you when you come to university is that you're fed a set of pre-digested ideas. And it's very easy for you to think that those are now your ideas. They're not. A lot of ideas you have to earn. And if it's a good idea, if it's a great idea, then you really have to earn it. It isn't easy to come up with your own ideas and your own opinions. It's hard work. But until you do, you are under their spell. So from my perspective, the good and authentic leaders are the ones that know and understand this concept. And they're willing to go through the work to better understand themselves and come up with thoughts and ideas that are truly and authentically their own, rather than being at the mercy of someone else's ideology.